During my graduation dinner, my grandma said, we all thought you'd drop out. Some still do. I smiled, slid over my new apartment key, and said, good. You could drop that opinion off there, since it's in your name now. I was still holding my fork when my grandma leaned back in her chair at Olive Garden in downtown Cleveland, dabbed her mouth with a napkin, and said it loud enough for the whole table to hear. We all thought you'd drop out. Some still do. Everyone froze. My mom's eyes went wide. My uncle smirked into his wine like he'd been waiting for this moment. And my grandma just kept looking at me with that tight, judgmental smile she always used when she thought she was being honest. Like honesty is the same thing as cruelty. It wasn't even what she said. God knows she said worse. It was the timing. My graduation dinner. My one night. The first genuinely good thing I'd had in a long time. I felt this weird ringing in my ears, the way you do right before you either cry or explode. Instead, I just smiled. A calm, slow smile that made her raise one eyebrow. Because she had no idea that while she was saying that, the waitress was on her way over with a little black gift bag I had asked them to bring out after dessert. For a second, I didn't say anything. I just watched her sip her water like she'd just dropped some wise family truth. Like she was the one who tough loved me into getting my degree instead of being the reason I nearly failed out freshman year. I took the little gift bag when the waitress arrived, reached in, pulled the key out. A single silver apartment key on a cheap keychain. I slid it across the table toward her. She blinked. What's this? Everyone was staring now. It's the key to my new place, I said. You could drop that opinion off there. She made a confused face, like she wasn't sure whether to be offended or curious. I leaned forward and added, very quietly, since it's in your name now. Her face went slack. My uncle froze mid-sip. My mom whispered, what did you do? Under her breath, like she already knew it was something big. I just sat back and let the moment hang there, heavy and uncomfortable, the way she had made everything heavy and uncomfortable for years. And the thing is, none of them knew. None of them knew what she'd done last month. None of them knew what I found out going through my financial aid papers. None of them knew why she was the last person in the world who should have tried to humiliate me tonight. But I did. I knew everything. Her signature, her lie, her little favor, the thing she assumed I would never discover. I cleared my throat and said, you should probably open the envelope inside the bag before dessert comes. Her hands were shaking as she reached in. She pulled out the envelope and slid a single sheet of paper halfway out before her face drained of color. She looked at me like I had just pointed a knife at her. She whispered, you didn't. Oh, I said, keeping my smile steady, I did. My uncle started asking what was going on, but my grandma wasn't listening. She was too busy staring at that paper like it was going to detonate. The waitress arrived with a slice of tiramisu, placed it in front of me, and cheerfully said, congratulations, graduate. Nobody else spoke. I just tapped the envelope with my finger and said, dessert's on me. But after that, we're going to talk about what you owe me. Her mouth fell open, and right as she finally managed to speak, I said, Action. I'll explain. You'll listen. Then I told her exactly where we'd start. People always assume grandparents are these gentle, endlessly supportive figures who knit sweaters and slip you $20 bills just because. Yeah, that was never my grandma. I grew up in Parma, just outside Cleveland. Small house, tight money, loud family. My grandma lived 5 blocks away, and everyone treated her word like law. She was the type who bragged about telling it like it is, even when it is meant tearing someone down for sport. She'd call my mom irresponsible, call my dad useless, call me the quiet one who better toughen up. And everyone laughed it off because that's just her. When I was 14, she told me I'd probably peak in high school if I was lucky. When I was 16, she told me not to bother applying to colleges because your kind of kid usually gives up anyway. She never said what your kind of kid meant, but I felt it. The disappointment, the judgment, the way she looked at me like I was already a failure who just hadn't gotten the memo yet. Despite all that, I still tried to keep the peace. Family was family. I kept my head down, worked part-time jobs, did my homework, tried not to be a burden. I actually got into Cleveland State with a small scholarship. My mom cried. My grandma made a face and said, "Don't get ahead of yourself." Freshman year hit hard. Money was tight, and the financial aid office kept losing documents. I was working 20 hours a week at a grocery store and still falling behind. There was one moment, one bad week, where I genuinely considered dropping out and moving back home. I never told anyone that, especially not her. But that same semester, my grandma randomly offered to help with paperwork like some wise elder swooping in. I was desperate enough to let her. She made a big scene about how she never got thanked, how ungrateful everyone was, but she filled out whatever form she said needed filling, handed me a sealed envelope, and told me she'd handled things. I believed her, and for a while it seemed true. My aid went through. My bills got smaller. Everything stabilized just enough that I could keep going. My grandma bragged to the whole family that she kept me in school. Everyone praised her for being so supportive. I stayed quiet. I thought maybe she actually cared. But even when she was helping, she couldn't resist those little digs. If you can't graduate with all this help, nobody can help you. Some kids just aren't built for college. I swallowed it because I needed to survive. Fast forward to last month, 1 month before graduation. I was finalizing my lease for my new apartment. The landlord needed extra paperwork because of some glitch with my identity verification. I didn't think much of it. Bureaucracy is messy. But when I logged into the portal to fix it, I saw something that made my stomach drop. A document, uploaded 4 years ago, signed electronically, not by me. The signature field read, Patricia L. H., my grandma. I thought it had to be a mistake. So I called the financial aid office, and I heard the words that still echo in my head. According to our records, your grandmother is the co-signer and guarantor on your student housing agreement from freshman year. She listed her address as the legal residence for any escalations. I literally sat there, staring at the screen, hearing buzzing in my ears. She hadn't helped. She had attached herself to me. Legally, financially, quietly, and not in a good way. It took me 2 days to figure out the rest. And when I did, I realized exactly why she was so confident I'd never make it to graduation. Because she had made sure that if I failed, she'd get something out of it. And tonight was the night I was finally going to say it out loud. After I found out she'd attached herself to my freshman year housing agreement, I planned to confront her. I rehearsed it. I imagined different versions. Calm, angry, silent but dead-eyed. But every time I actually saw her, she acted so normal, so smugly normal, that the word just died in my throat. The next Sunday, we had a family get-together at my aunt's place in Lakewood. My grandma sat in her usual recliner, making comments about how kids these days don't know responsibility. I kept looking at her, wondering whether she remembered what she'd done or if she assumed I'd never find out. Honestly, it felt like both. She kept bragging about how she took care of my business when I was too scatterbrained. My uncle kept nodding along like she was some kind of saint. And the whole time, I was sitting there with the knowledge that she had basically forged her way into my life in a way that could have destroyed me if anything had gone wrong. Later that night, I went home and pulled up every document I could find. Every email, every scan form, every line of bureaucratic text I'd ignored because I trusted her. And once I pieced it all together, I realized the truth. She hadn't co-signed to help me. She had co-signed to control me. The agreement she signed, without telling me, listed her as the fallback payer if I defaulted. And the clause under that? It meant housing collections could be legally pursued through her address first if I failed. Her address, not mine, meaning she'd positioned herself as the financial choke point for my entire freshman year. And the sickest part was that she told the rest of the family that I was so irresponsible that she had to rescue me. She told people I couldn't manage my own paperwork. She told them I begged her for help. I didn't beg. I barely even asked. I just trusted her. And she used that trust to weave herself into my life in a way she could weaponize whenever she wanted. Once I saw everything clearly, all the old memories clicked into place. Her constant comments about how I owed her everything, how I needed to remember who kept me afloat, how she expected me to take care of her someday. I always thought she was just exaggerating. Now I realized she was speaking literally. 2 days before graduation, things got worse. I got a letter forwarded to the new apartment address I'd given the leasing office. At first, I thought it was some leftover paperwork. But when I opened it, my stomach dropped. It was a notice, a pending referral for debt reassessment tied to the old freshman housing contract. Something about an audit of accounts from the year the building changed management. It said there might be a discrepancy, and if they confirmed one, the guarantor would be notified. Guarantor? My grandma. I sat on my bed holding the letter, reading it over and over again, feeling like a trapdoor had opened under me. If anything came of that audit, if there was even a $200 mistake, she would have been hit first. And she would have absolutely blamed me. Loudly, publicly, violently. She would have turned the entire family against me and acted like I destroyed her life. And here's the part that made my hand shake. She signed that freshman year agreement wrong. Illegally wrong. In a way that could have come back on me. I knew then that she wasn't just meddling. She wasn't just controlling. She was reckless and selfish and willing to risk my entire academic life without even blinking. That's when I decided I wasn't going to just confront her. I was going to expose her. Not in a screaming match. Not in some messy blow-up. No, I was going to line up the truth so cleanly she couldn't wiggle out of a single word. Graduation dinner was the perfect place. Everyone would be there, and she would finally understand what it feels like when someone pulls the rug out from under you. But the part she didn't know, the part none of them knew, was that her involvement in my life went even deeper than one forged signature. And the real shock was still coming. When she pulled that paper halfway out of the envelope at Olive Garden, she recognized it instantly. Her hand trembled like someone had cracked open the past she'd been praying would stay buried. Everyone kept asking, "What's going on?" But she just stared at me, eyes wide, pupils shaking, like she already knew exactly which part of her mess I'd found. Except she didn't know the half of it. I leaned forward, kept my voice low but clear enough for the whole table. "Remember that freshman housing agreement? The one you said you helped me with?" Her throat bobbed. I don't know what you're talking about." She knew. I pulled the paper the rest of the way out. It was a certified letter copy, the one she thought I'd never see. Her forged digital signature. Her address. Her handwriting written in a blue pen next to a correction the school had scanned. My mom gasped. My uncle muttered, "Jesus Christ." But I wasn't done. "That's not even the worst part," I said. "Because I thought this was it, the big secret. The one mistake you made." I set the paper on the table between us. But then I pulled my credit report last week to prep for my new lease. And guess what I found? Her eyes snapped up to mine. "You didn't," she whispered, dread creeping into her voice. "I didn't," I said. "You did." I pulled out the second document. This one hit like a brick across the table. My mom covered her mouth. My uncle sat up straighter. Even the waitress, who didn't understand what she was seeing, took one look and awkwardly backed away. It was a credit account, opened 3.5 years ago, during my freshman winter break, in my name, using my social security number, and listing her as the secondary authorized user. My grandma whispered, that isn't what you think. It's exactly what I think." I cut in. "You opened a retail card under my name. For that Christmas shopping spree you bragged about. The one you said your church donated money for. Except the balance never got paid. It rolled over. Month after month." She shook her head wildly. No, that was, "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said. "Because you used my credit to buy gifts for other people, then let the balance rot while you told everyone I was financially irresponsible." My mom whispered, "Mom, how could you?" My grandma looked around the table like she was drowning. "I didn't think. You weren't supposed to find ya," I said. "I wasn't supposed to find out, just like I wasn't supposed to make it to graduation. Right? That's why you said what you said tonight." She flinched like I slapped her. The entire table was silent, except for the clinking of plates from other diners who had no idea their evening was unfolding next to a family implosion. I leaned in until she couldn't look away. "But here's the real twist," I said, "because I didn't just find out about the account. I took it a step further." My uncle asked, "A step further how?" I turned the envelope upside down. A third paper slid out, a notice of investigation from the credit issuer, stamped and dated last week. "They reviewed the application," I said, "and they confirmed something interesting." My grandma's face went white, whiter than I'd ever seen her. "They found out the handwriting on the mailed-in portion wasn't mine," I continued. "The phone number listed wasn't mine. The address wasn't mine. I let that sink in. And the signature? I said, the one pretending to be mine? They said it perfectly matched the one on the freshman housing form. My grandma gasped like someone had punched the air out of her. Yep, her own forged signature had tied the whole thing together. That's when the realization hit her, and everyone else at the table, that the situation wasn't just ugly family drama. It was fraud, and she was caught. But even that wasn't the full story. Because the reason she did it, the cold, selfish reason behind all of it, hadn't even come out yet. And when it did, no one at the table would ever look at her the same again. After the shock settled into this thick, suffocating silence, my grandma kept whispering, "This isn't fair. This isn't fair." Like I had ambushed an innocent person. But I didn't say anything else. Not yet. I just let her sit there with the truth buzzing around her like flies. Because what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd spent the last 3 weeks preparing for this moment. I didn't go nuclear out of nowhere. I didn't walk into graduation dinner hoping for chaos. I walked in with a plan. It all started the night I found the credit account. My chest was pounding so hard I could hear it. At first, I panicked. Then I cried. Then I got angry, this deep, stomach-tight kind of anger that feels like it's burning you from the inside out. But after that, I got calm. A scary kind of calm. The kind where you realize you're done playing nice. First, I called the credit issuer and filed a fraud inquiry. I didn't accuse her by name. I just said the account wasn't mine and I needed it reviewed. I asked them to verify the signed documents, the mailing address, the listed phone number. They opened a case. Then I requested copies of the original mailed forms. They scanned and sent them. Seeing her handwriting next to my forged signature made something in me snap. But it also made something inside me sharpen. If she thought she could ruin my credit to get leverage over me, she had no idea who she was messing with. Next, I contacted the university's old housing office, the one that manages archival agreements. I asked for a full audit of my freshman year paperwork. When they emailed me the scanned originals, I sat on my bedroom floor and compared every single detail with the credit application. Same pen, same handwriting, same signature attempt, same address. She'd used the exact same style of forging my name both times. That was my proof. But I wasn't done. I booked a consultation with a legal aid attorney downtown. I brought copies, explained everything. I expected them to tell me I was overreacting or to shrug it off as a family misunderstanding. They didn't. The attorney read through the documents, looked up at me, and said, very plainly, "This is identity theft." Hearing someone say it out loud, professionally, clearly, without hesitation, sent a chill through me. It wasn't just messy family drama. It wasn't your grandma overstepping. It wasn't just paperwork. It was a crime. A crime she committed knowing I was a broke freshman who needed her. A crime she committed knowing I'd never question her paperwork. A crime she committed thinking I'd never find out. The attorney told me I had options. Real options. Ones that would change her life permanently. I didn't decide anything that day, but I walked out of that office feeling like the power shift had already begun. For the first time in my life, she wasn't sitting on some invisible throne above me. She was vulnerable. And she had no idea. The next step was the one that took real planning. I gathered every document, printed everything, saved multiple copies, filed an online credit freeze, opened a fraud alert, got a new ID issued with updated verification. I even spoke to the leasing office about what to do if any audits came through. They assured me the discrepancy wasn't on my end. By the time graduation week arrived, I wasn't scared anymore. I was ready. The final touch, the moment I knew I'd take everything out into the open, was when the credit issuer emailed me saying the investigation had reached a significant finding and they'd be mailing a letter to the account's associated address unless I requested a hold. The associated address? Her house. That letter was in my bag at dinner. She had no idea how deep she was in, but she was about to, because this wasn't just revenge. This was me taking back the years she spent tearing me down and using the truth as the weapon she never thought I'd have. And I hadn't even played my biggest card yet. My grandma sat there at the table, stiff and shaking, clutching the edge of her chair like it was the only thing keeping her upright. But while everyone else was frozen in shock, I wasn't watching her. I was watching my mom. She looked pale, confused, hurt, angry all at once. And when our eyes met, something inside her shifted. She mouthed, "What else?" Like she could feel there was another layer I hadn't peeled back yet. She was right. Because the whole thing, the forged signature, the credit account, the fake co-signing, wasn't even the darkest thing I found. That came from a place I didn't expect. It came from my dad. We're not close. He lives on the east side now. He and my mom split years ago, and he's always been one of those barely present, but shows up when there's food kind of dads. He keeps things light, surface level, doesn't get involved. But 2 weeks ago, right after I discovered the credit mess, he actually called me. Not texted, called. I thought it was about graduation. It wasn't. He sounded weird, quiet, nervous. He asked if we could meet in person, so we met at a diner in Euclid. He didn't even order anything. He just sat across from me, hands shaking, and said, "I heard something I think you need to know." He told me that back when I moved into freshman housing, my grandma called him late at night and said she needed his signature on something for me. She told him it was an emergency housing form I forgot to complete. She said she was just helping me behind the scenes. He didn't think twice. He signed whatever she asked and went home. Except here's the thing. The housing office never received any form with his signature. So what did he sign? I didn't know, until he pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his jacket pocket. It was a copy. He said he found it in his old files when he was cleaning out a box in his garage. It was an authorization of financial responsibility form, with MY name typed at the top, with his signature at the bottom. And in the middle, where the co-signer's information should have been, was something sickening. My grandma had whited out an entire section and handwritten details over it. But the part that sent a shock all the way down my spine wasn't the forgery itself. It was the date. It was dated 2 months before she signed the housing agreement for me. 2 months before she inserted herself as my guarantor. 2 months before she opened that retail card under my name, meaning she wasn't reacting to a crisis. She was planning something, and she got my dad involved on purpose, so she'd have something to blame him for if anything went wrong. She set him up to look like the irresponsible one, the liar, the screw-up. She was building a safety net for herself out of our names, our credit, our identities. And she did it quietly, like she'd been preparing to pull the plug on me from the very beginning. When I confronted my dad at the diner and asked why he never followed up, he put his head in his hands and said, "Because she told me you knew. She told me you asked her to help. She told me you trusted her. And I didn't want to interfere." He looked destroyed. That's when I realized this wasn't just about my credit. This wasn't about one mistake or panic decision. This was calculated. This was layered. This was a pattern. My grandma had been weaving this web for years, getting people to sign things, trust her, obey her, while she twisted the story into whatever made her look like the martyr. And the worst part? There was still one more reason behind it all. One cold, horrifying motive she thought she had hidden forever. But I'd found that too. And once I said it out loud at that dinner table, she wouldn't be able to pretend anymore. My grandma finally broke the silence at the table. Her voice was tiny, shaky, almost childlike. I didn't mean for any of this to get twisted. Twisted. That was the word she chose. My mom snapped. "Mom, you stole from your own grandchild. You lied. You." But I lifted my hand, not to defend her, to stop the noise, because this was the moment everything needed to be quiet. I took a breath, looked straight at my grandma. Her eyes were glossy, full of panic, but not guilt. Not real guilt. Just fear of consequences. She whispered, "You don't know the whole story." "Oh, but I did." I said, "Actually, I know exactly why you did all this." She froze, really froze, like her whole body locked up. My uncle muttered, "Why would she?" I leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice level. Because she didn't think I'd finish college. She didn't think I'd ever stand on my own. She didn't think I'd ever move out, ever escape, ever build anything for myself. My grandma opened her mouth to argue, but I kept going. So she made sure she'd always have a hold on me. A legal one, a financial one, a credit one. Something permanent. Something she could yank whenever she wanted. My mom looked horrified. Why? Why would you want that? My grandma's face crumpled, but not from remorse. From exposure. Because now we were reaching the dark part. The part she knew, but never expected to be spoken out loud. I said, "You were planning for me to fail." Her shoulders twitched, like I'd slapped her. "You bet against me," I continued. "You assumed I'd drop out, come crawling back, move into your spare room. You assumed I'd need you. Forever." Everyone stared at her. This wasn't anger anymore. This was dread, the kind that sinks into your gut. "Not because you loved me," I said. "Not because you wanted to help, but because you needed a fallback. Someone to live with you. Someone to depend on. Someone to take care of you when you got older." She whispered, "That's not. I just didn't want to be alone." My uncle's head snapped toward her. "Is that what this is? You try to trap him?" I shook my head. "No, it's worse." I pulled out the last paper from the envelope. My grandma's face went completely blank. A dead blank, like her soul just stepped out her body. It was a copy of a letter she wrote last year. One she thought nobody saw. One she mailed to a senior housing complex in Brook Park. A waitlist form. Under primary caretaker, if applicant becomes unable to live independently, she wrote. My grandson. He is financially tied to me. She listed my name, my address, my old dorm, my phone number, my place in her life that she hadn't earned. She'd engineered. My mom whispered, "Oh my God." My grandma's voice finally cracked. "I didn't think you'd find that." She said it like the tragedy was her exposure, not the thing she did. I felt my jaw tighten. "You manipulated my future," I said. "You sabotaged my credit. You forged my signature. You dragged my dad into it. You tied your debt to my name. Also, you could secure yourself a caretaker you didn't have to earn." The truth hung in the air like acid. "You didn't believe in me," I said quietly. "You feared me succeeding. Because if I did, I wouldn't need you." For the first time all night, she didn't argue. She didn't deny it. She didn't fight. She just stared at me with this cold, hollow look, like she was finally realizing she'd lost control of the one thing she was counting on, me. "And now," I said, sliding the paper closer to her, "you get to live with the truth you built." Her eyes filled with dread, because she knew what came next. Revenge. Real, final, permanent revenge. My grandma sat there breathing like the room had shrunk around her. She kept glancing at the papers on the table as if they might burst into flames and disappear if she stared hard enough. But they didn't. They just sat there, quiet, unmovable proof of everything she'd built her life on. Control. Manipulation. Fear. She whispered, You wouldn't really do anything with that. You're just angry." I sat back in my chair, calm in a way I had never been around her before. "I already did," I said. Her head jerked up. My uncle leaned forward. "What does that mean?" I pulled out my phone, unlocked it, scrolled, and turned the screen toward the table so everyone could see. The fraud investigation? Already filed. The identity theft report? Submitted. The credit freeze? Done. The dispute on the forged retail account? In progress. The university's compliance office review of the freshman housing forms? Confirmed. My grandma gasped. "And oh, stop. You'll ruin me." I didn't raise my voice. "I didn't need to. You ruined yourself," I said. "I'm just undoing it." She reached across the table, actually reaching for my wrist like she thought she still had access to me. I moved my arm out of reach. My mom shook her head, silent tears running down her face. My uncle stared at my grandma like he didn't recognize her. But I wasn't finished. I slid one last paper across the table. A copy of the letter the credit issuer was preparing to mail to the account's associated address. Her address. "I requested they send this directly to your house," I said. "Not mine." She shook her head desperately. Please, I can explain. Let me handle it." "You did handle it," I said. "For 4 years. Behind my back. Behind everyone's back." She looked like she might faint. She held the table with both hands, knuckles white. Then I delivered the final blow, the one I'd been holding since the moment I walked in Olive Garden. "The new apartment lease?" I said. "The one you think is in your name?" Her eyes widened with hope for just a second. I leaned forward. "I removed you last week." The hope died instantly. The landlord processed the correction after I showed them the forged student housing documents. "They took you off everything. You have no access, no tie, no say." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. "And that key I slid to you," I added. "It isn't to my apartment." She looked down at the key like it had betrayed her. It's the key to your storage unit, I said, because that's where the rest of your paperwork is. Every copy, every file, everything you forged, everything you hid. Her breathing turned shallow. I moved out of your house, I said, so you can't lose anything when investigators start asking questions. Her hand shook as she grabbed the key. You trapped me, she whispered. No, I said. You trapped yourself. I'm just stepping out of the cage. The table stayed silent for a long moment. Finally, she whispered, What am I supposed to do now? I looked at her with a calm, I earned the hard way. You're supposed to deal with the consequences of your choices, I said. The same way you expected me to deal with the consequences of paperwork I didn't even know you signed. I stood up. My family watched me like I'd grown into someone they didn't know, but someone they respected. I'm done being your backup plan, I told her. I'm done being your safety net. I'm done being the person you gamble with. I picked up my graduation cap from the extra chair beside me. You spent years betting I'd fail, I said. Now you finally get to live in a world where I didn't. My grandma didn't say another word. I left her there with the papers, with the key, with the truth she built out of lies. And as I walked out of the restaurant into the warm Cleveland night, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Free. Completely, terrifyingly, beautifully free. And yeah, there was pain. There was anger. But there was also something else. Closure. The kind you earn. On the drive home, I texted my mom. I won't be part of her future, but I'm finally taking back my own. And for the first time in my life, that felt like enough. Turns out, the moment you stop letting someone write your future is the moment they lose control of your past, too.